I turned 18 in January of 1997. I was 216 months old, 939 weeks and 2 days old, 6,575 days old, 157,800 hours old, 9,468,000 minutes old, 568,080,000 seconds old in January of 1997. I knew when I turned 18 and would later that year graduate high school that my summer would look different. I knew, in fact, that my summers would look different for all the years to come. Instead of going to 3 weeks of summer camp at the end of June and through most of July, instead of starting marching band camp the month before school on August 1st, I would have a job. And I understood this expectation, though I lamented my lost youth. I got a job at the National Road Kroger in Wheeling, West Virginia. I was a bag boy. The obvious job of the bag boy was to bag groceries and make sure the bread wasn't smashed and the eggs weren't broken. Between bagging groceries and not squashing the bread, we would mop the floor or go to the parking lot and collect the empty grocery carts. Some people know them as buggies down here. The parking lot attendant was an interesting guy. He'd been there for quite a few years and didn't really care for his job. He didn't really care if he lost it, and to this day I don't know how he kept it. He completely ignored the managers and was rude to customers. For the most part, I liked him. Maybe it was because I didn't really fit in at the Kroger on National Road, and neither did he. He was older than I was, but we had that in common. We hated being there. We were both countercultural. I don't know. One of the cashiers was out on a smoke break, and we were talking about nothing, and he said to the attendant, "You should tell him about that thing you're a part of." And that's when I was invited to my first Ku Klux Klan meeting. And I don't know if he was serious, but I know he didn't care for black people. I know if he was really I didn't know if he was really part of an organized group, but he did joke about decorating the trees. I think of him when I hear Billie Holiday sing Strange Fruit. I don't know if he was serious or if he was joking, but I knew that I couldn't laugh. And I knew it wasn't funny. But then, that was a long time ago in what seems like a galaxy far away. I heard over the weekend that Dylan Roof was found competent to stand trial for his mass murder last year in Mother Emanuel AME in Charleston, South Carolina. The night before he drove to Mother Emanuel, he was with friends in a trailer in Columbia, South Carolina. And drunk, he raged about starting a race war. He raged about his plans, and no one took him seriously. If they had taken him seriously, would he have just complained that they were being too PC, that he couldn't have been serious? Or that he was just joking? If he'd been stopped from purchasing a gun, would he have been championed by the NRA in a travesty of justice? If. I don't know if it's worth talking about the ifs. And even more so, I don't know if it's worth getting involved in all the issues around time travel. Hold on, let me explain. I grew up in the Rust Belt. I remember the last year my father's factory hosted a family Christmas party. The room was full, at least 200 workers and their families. Santa Claus sitting in a makeshift throne at the front of an open room on the factory floor. In the day before the party, the workers would sweep up the floor, put down wood shavings to soak up the oil and grease, make benches out of cinder blocks and planks. On that day of the party, I would eat donuts, drink chocolate milk, and sit with my friends, sing Christmas songs, and look forward to hearing my name called so that I could get a gift from Santa Claus, because everybody got a gift. My father got a turkey, and I got a remote-controlled car. I didn't notice the first year the party didn't happen. In reality, I didn't notice for quite a few years. But I always remember the year-end speech of that last party. I just remember the boss standing in the front saying, "Things aren't looking very good for the next year." I understand in hindsight what he was doing. This was a union factory, and it was about to enter contract negotiation. And every year, there was a chance that we, because it felt like all of us in our house, would go on strike. In this situation, we would revert to living on my mother's income alone. It didn't happen often, but it did happen. I don't remember the last year I had chocolate milk and donuts at that company. The last year we sang with Santa Claus. But over time I did notice that they stopped replacing the people who retired. I know that when my father retired, there were less than 20 people working there. The Industrial Revolution, in close proximity to the Ohio River, blessed the area for growth early on. Globalization? Not so much. At least that's the story that's told on a national level. It leaves out a lot, but at the end of the day, I hear the same thing. We just need something to change. I wonder what conversation would look like if Dylan, Ruth, and I stood together at the Kroger's on National Road in Wheeling, West Virginia. I wonder how he'd respond to the KKK invite. I wonder how I would respond to him. After the last election, someone I love told me I was spitting on my heritage. And I can't help but wonder what made me so different than him. I didn't leave West Virginia to go to the left coast. I got a degree at a little school in Arkansas, a school that separated the boys and the girls and made premarital sex against the rules. I was surrounded by pro-life Republicans. I still laugh when I compare the yearbook pictures of the young Republicans and the young Democrats at that college. I was not in a liberal bastion. I left Arkansas for Tennessee, then Tennessee for Mississippi. When I look at my history, my heritage, and my upbringing, I should be all about making America great again. Eboo Patel, in his book Acts of Faith, describes a concept called the faith line. He says this: 100 years ago, the great African-American scholar W.E.B. Du Bois famously said, "The problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line." I believe that the 21st century will be shaped by the question of the faith line. On one side of the faith line are the religious totalitarians. Their conviction is that only one interpretation of one religion is a legitimate way of being, believing and belonging on earth. Everyone else needs to be cowed or converted or condemned or killed. On the other side of the faith line are the religious pluralists, who hold that people believing in different creeds, belonging to different communities, need to live together. Religious pluralism is neither mere coexistence nor forced consensus. It is a form of proactive cooperation that affirms the identity of the constituent communities while emphasizing that the well-being of each and all depends on the health of the whole. It is the belief that the common good is best served when each community has a chance to make its unique contribution. Religious totalitarians have the unique advantage of being able to oppose each other and work together at the same time. Osama bin Laden says that Christians are out to destroy Muslims. Pat Robertson says that Muslims want only to dominate Christians. Bin Laden points to Pat Robertson as evidence of his case. Robertson points to bin Laden as proof of his. Bin Laden says he is moving Muslims to his side of the faith line. Robertson claims he is moving Christians to his. But if you look from a certain angle, you see that they are not opposite sides at all. They are right next to each other, standing shoulder to shoulder, a most unlikely pair. Two totalitarians working collectively against the dream of a common life together. Eboo Patel begins the discussion of the faith line telling the story of Eric Rudolph. He was arrested on May 31st, 2003 at a Save-A-Lot in North Carolina after multiple bombings. His first bombing killed one and wounded 111 during the Summer Games in Atlanta on July 27, 1996. He was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list in 1998 and spent 5 years hiding in the Appalachian wilderness. During that time, he was praised by many as a hero. In that time, he perpetrated at least 3 other bombings. A women's clinic in Atlanta on January 16, 1997, injuring 5. A gay bar in Atlanta on February 21, 1997, injuring 5. And another women's clinic in Birmingham on January 29, 1998, killing a police officer and clinic security guard. After his bombing in 1996, he released a statement. He denounced the games under the grounds of defense against international socialism. The nightclub and the clinics were to stop the homosexual agenda and abortions. He is now serving 4 life sentences. The death penalty was taken off the table after giving up the location of 250 pounds of dynamite hidden in the forests of North Carolina. He pled guilty with pride, lecturing the judge on the righteousness of his actions. Patel writes of Rudolph, Eric Rudolph might have been a loner, but he did not act alone. He was produced by a movement and encouraged by a culture in the woods of western North Carolina where Rudolph evaded federal agents for 5 years. People cheering him on, helped him, made t-shirts that said, "Run, Rudolph, run." The day he was finally caught, a woman from the area was quoted saying, "Rudolph is a Christian, and I'm a Christian. Those are our values. These are our woods." Of all the information published about Rudolph, one sentence in particular stood out to me. This is Patel writing. Rudolph wrote an essay denying the Holocaust when he was in high school. How does a teenager come to that view? And Patel goes on to answer that question in the next paragraph. The answer is simple. People taught him. Eric Rudolph had always had trouble in school, fights, truancy. He never quite fit in. His father died when he was young. His mother met and followed a series of dangerous iconoclasts who preached a theology of hate. Patel holds Rudolph in dichotomy with the students of Whitwell Middle School in Whitwell, Tennessee, another Appalachian town right outside of Chattanooga. Because while one terrorist was hiding in the woods of North Carolina, a group of middle school students embarked on a life-changing activity to better understand the Holocaust. The documentary Paperclips opens with a teacher saying, "Our goal was to teach children what happens when prejudice goes unchecked." This small middle school in a town of 1,600 people decided to research hate so they could learn to love. The small Tennessee town is predominantly white. Its teachers, white. Administrators, white. And students, mostly white. They commented that there were maybe 6 black students in the middle school. The children were flabbergasted when they heard of the deaths in the concentration camps. As they set out to learn about World War II and the Holocaust, one student said, "I don't even know what 6 million looks like." The principal and the teachers decided they would write letters and ask the people they know to send them paper clips. They had learned that the opponents of the war in Norway would wear paper clips in solidarity with the Jews. So they sought 6 million paper clips so they could better understand what 6 million looks like. The documentary takes us along as the children go on their journey. The school began to get national attention, and Holocaust survivors would come to talk to the children, always bringing their paper clips. They would receive letters in the mail from all over the world telling stories of surviving the concentration camps. One briefcase was sent by another school in Germany, each paperclip with a small letter of apology written to Anne Frank. It took a few years for the children to get all the paperclips, and after receiving 22 million paperclips, they decided to stop and sat to figure out what to do with them. And in a conversation with 2 German journalists who'd helped them dramatically throughout this affair, the teachers and the principal said, "We don't know what to do with all these paperclips." And they said, "Wouldn't it be great if we could find a rail car from that time, from that place, and put all of them there so they stand here forever?" He said, "No, we wouldn't be able to do that." To which the 2 journalists said, "We will find you a rail car." The rail car arrived in Boston Harbor on September 9th, 2001. As the documentary pushes forward, they show the rail car crossing over a bridge on September 11th, 2001. And they're talking about how this car that once stood for hate would now stand for light in our darkest of days. I have very little doubt that they were reflecting on the events that happened on that terrible day, paying homage without taking away from the hope in the story. Today, you can visit Whitwell Middle School and on the grounds sits a rail car. They decided they would fill it with 11 million paperclips, 6 million for the Jewish deaths, and the remaining 5 for the homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, and gypsies. They did not just choose paperclips. They didn't just go in and grab paperclips, the first ones they saw. They selected paperclips from all over the United States and all over the world. And if you want to go today and visit, you can go on a tour. In 2004, when this documentary was released, it was the students who initially sought to learn that would take visiting schools through the tour. They would spend the day to teach children about hate, but more importantly, to teach them about love. So while one terrorist hid, these children learned to teach love. UU minister and theologian James Luther Adams spent considerable time in his theological discourse talking about voluntary associations. Prominent among them is the church. We are here because we choose to be. We come here not because we're commanded, but because we're called. We come not because an invisible hand forces us from above, but one from within. The church then, in Adam's thought, ministers to the psychological well-being of its members as well as directing our energy towards the creation of the beloved community through social action. And the role of the church is prophetic. It speaks to a world in which it lives and in which it breathes. In his essay, Time and History, he says this: "A church that does not concern itself with the struggle in history for human decency and justice, a church that does not show concern for the shape of things to come, a church that does not attempt to interpret the signs of the times is not a prophetic church. The prophetic, liberal church, as he says, is the church in which all members share the common responsibility to attempt to foresee the consequences of human behavior, both individual and institutional, with the intention of making history in place of merely being pushed around by it. I often hear UU parents talking about the importance of religious education programs in church, especially in the South. They mention that their children come home from school having just learned from their friends that they're all going to hell if they don't change. And it's those same children years later that come to our UU children when they're coming out of the closet as gay, because they know our children are safe and affirming. So we must return to the faith line. On one side stands those who say, you must believe as I do. And on the other stands you, me, us, UUCJ. We are here so that none other need stand alone. On my next birthday, I will be 38 years old, 13,880 days, 333,120 hours, 19,982,200 minutes. And I can't help but ask, how did I end up different than Dylan Roof? I remember when my first friends came out of the closet. I remember when my first friend had an abortion. I remember in college choosing my professors, even the conservative Christian school in Arkansas, professors who only chose babysitters from the population of exchange students so that their children would be raised multiculturally and multilingually. Old Testament professors who weren't dogmatic about literal interpretation of Scripture, and evangelists who knew we didn't have to think alike to love alike. But I had more. I had a mother that took me to church 3 times a week, whether I liked it or not. And even surrounded by those men and women who are considered to be conservative, who now question how I treat my heritage. Among them, I learned that God is love, and love does not dishonor others. Thank you.